Welcome, dear listener, to another Fright Night this chilly December from the broadcast studio of Croatoan Radio. As you've probably noticed, the past 3 episodes have been the first 3 chapters of a much longer horror novel I've been eager to flesh out. However, there are still accounts of the strange and metaphysical being sent to me, so I feel it my civic duty to broadcast these creepy tales from Croatoan County. The first of these 3 tales I will broadcast over the coming weeks comes from a distressed young man from North Dakota who reports that under the guise of good, an evil relic of the past approached him during a time of emotional hardship. Please join me in congratulating this young man for his courage and listen along to matters of the supernatural as one day you may find yourself passing into the multinational, transcontinental, metaphysical realm of Croatoan County.
Ralph, what are you doing?
Ralph Fischer didn't care to look towards his approaching friend of 10 years. After all this time, he knew the pitch of his voice, the creak of his bike struggling through the recent snowfall, and the concern in his voice. He hated that tone. He came out to the bridge to get away from it. For some reason, the pooling remnant of water known colloquially as Knife River, frozen and glassy, reflected an introspective calm as the matter of his subconscious reassembled itself under the gaze of childhood memories. He loved Alvin for all of the adventures they had together, but hoped his distance would be forgiven as a pass for seeking the one thing he needed now: solitude. Ralph responded,
I'm getting some fresh air. Well, your parents asked me to find you. They're worried since you're not answering your phone.
Ralph remained quiet, unrepentantly, uncaringly, disconnectedly, still gazing into the water once boisterous 4 months ago, now sluggish, rigid, drained.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when I put it on silent. What? Your parents getting worried?
Alvin said with budding frustration. Ralph snapped from his moody hypnosis at his friend's tone, firing back.
And where was that worry when I didn't come home? Huh? What were they doing?
Alvin shook his head.
You can't blame them, Ralph. I know what it was, and yeah, I can blame them. See? Look.
Ralph raised his left hand while placing the right on his chest, heart racing from defiant justifications, now jet fuel to anger.
I, Ralph Fischer, blame my parents for not being there when I hate them. While we're at it, because I can do anything, I hate you too. Where the hell were you? We walk home from school every day, but you faked being sick.
Alvin's face slackened, his reddening eyes reflecting the image of his brother's wrathful words with genuine hurt.
When they called me, I tried looking for you, you know that. This was one of the spots I came to. And when I wasn't there, what did you do? I didn't know. None of us knew, man. If we knew...
Ralph's face tightened, his brow pressing his eyelids to a firm shut, steam hissing from between his teeth, evaporating in the frigid air. He had to leave. The pressure was causing his legs to shake, his fists to lose blood from their grip, and his freshly formed migraine to metastasize. Ralph broke the conversation by walking away, refusing to hear or acknowledge any words from his friend, not that he could from the pounding of blood drowning every other sense in its roar. Several minutes later, he found himself at the steps to his home. 2 stories, Tudor-style incline, slowly sliding sheets of snow off its sun-reflecting roof. Conical Christmas bulbs, incandescent nostalgia, and fresh garland reminding the green of spring drooped from the eaves. It was a beautiful home. The birth of joy it held from the generations of Fischer brought a level of pride and permanence. However, these soul-sanctioning aspects were paled by the shadow hanging over Ralph. It was the same shadow that made ice cream tasteless, TV shows, boring, and video games, tedious. Ralph's body ached, and that ache led to chill pervading his nerves, regardless of the temperature around him. That ache was a symptom of what happened on his way home from school. He hated the idea of allowing it, and anything else relating to it, conceptually or otherwise, any description other than thing. It was nebulous and confined to a dark corner of psyche, projected as far away as he could push it. Yet no matter how far away he wanted it to be, that thing always slingshotted back to the forefront of his mind, usually in times where he had become almost happy, animating him to his next task, to try forgetting about it. That walk home from school, that thing, pushed him to enter the house and start peeling the layers of warmth away.
Ralph!
His mother, hair woven with silver strands of age and stress, flew down the flight of stairs, stopping a couple steps short of their end.
Oh, Ralph, I was worried sick.
Still not meeting her searching eyes, he stretched the time he didn't have to, by foe struggling to remove his boots.
Well, I'm here. Yes, well, go get dressed up and dress in something nice. Your cousin should be here.
She checked her watch and gasped.
Well, any minute now. Come, hurry. My cousins? From Wisconsin?
No, silly, from California. I told you about it this morning at breakfast. They're a couple removed, fabulously wealthy, and their family. Since your father's contacted them, they were hoping to meet with us to keep the relations strong. Maybe we could house swap and have a week in El Cerrito. Wouldn't that be nice, to get away to El Cerrito?
Why'd they want to live here for a week? In this dump? There's nothing to do in this town anyways.
His mother quieted momentarily. He still wouldn't look at her. Despite his task ending, he stood in his long johns, slouched against the wall. He felt held there by the attention of his mother. She, realizing it, released him. Traveling the last couple of steps, she stood at the entrance to the staircase.
Go get dressed. I'll make us some dinner.
Ralph nodded and walked past her. She tried to rustle his wheat golden hair. Sensing her approaching grasp, he recoiled to the side, hastening his steps away. One tear streaked down her face. She was as lost as her son, but she knew she shouldn't show it. So she stifled the heaves of sorrow, holding herself together just long enough to hear the door to his room shut. Only at that noise did her tears multiply, and she sought her own distance, her own tasks to push away the heart-rending pain in the comfort of her kitchen. Ralph's eyes fluttered open. He got halfway through getting dressed before he gave up on the whole endeavor, opting to pull the covers over and sleep away his sour mood. The loud greetings of his parents and a whole host of steps below, waking him from his troubled dreams. Clicking the power button to his phone, the soft blue glow read a half-an-hour passage of time. Shaking his head, he thought to himself,
any minute they'll be here, huh?
Several sharp raps of a heavy fist shook his door.
Hey, R, the family's here, and dinner's just about ready. Come down and say hi.
His father's usual deep voice merged with the gruff byproducts of hard labor and shrewd local businessry. The voice he used more recently was lighter, more soft in the attempt of understanding. Ralph didn't know how to feel about the change. It signaled a difference in their relationship.
I'll be right down, Dad. I'm up now. Thanks. Sorry.
There's no reason to be sorry, son. As Ralph grabbed a shirt from his closet, he could feel his father's presence linger outside the door before he walked downstairs with initially slow steps that quickened to the change of mindset and the joyous voices of family meeting for the first time. an experience Ralph shortly engaged in as he too descended. "Ah, here's the young lord of the manor. You must be Ralph," said a voice surprisingly similar to his father's, if not for the slight Californian accent. He stood about as tall, yet his clothes were more sophisticated than his father's plaid shirt and worn jeans. In one hand he held a box of Ghirardelli chocolates, and in the other an age-cracked leather duffel bag, the only piece of luggage among them. Ralph's mom broke in, rushing to his side, simultaneously holding, grooming, and performing for the present company.
"Oh, Ralph, there you are. Why aren't you wearing your polo?" That's okay. I guess your father didn't dress up either." "Honey, you're smothering him."
It was Hannah, the Californian wife's turn to speak up.
"Oh, that's our job, though. There's not one day I do not smother my dear Helen, Lucas, and Theo. See, Hannah knows."
"Yes, and that's why the dads have to defend our sons, since they can't talk back to their mothers." Ralph's father pointed. "See, Hans knows." The parents laughed at their commonality come full circle, while Ralph and the other children continued to look at each other awkwardly.
"Oh, and chocolates, you shouldn't have, Hans."
Hans bore a bleached white grin. "Sweet things always make for good first impressions."
"Well, all the same, thank you,"
Ralph's mother said with an overindulgent shrug, adding at the end,
"Shall we have dinner?"
"Let's. I hope you have some of your famous Midwest cuisine." Ralph's father chuckled. "I'm sure you can get anything delivered to you in El Cerrito. We've gotten many things delivered to us." His hand readjusted its grip on the bag's handle. "But surprisingly, authentic North Dakota food isn't one of them." Shifting on the front of her feet, Ralph's mother added,
"That's why we've got sloppy joes, potato au gratin, jello, salad, and chips."
Ralph noticed the younger children becoming considerably more excited at the idea of copious salt and sugar entering their diet. It was the eldest, Helen, who showed no change, who shared something with him. It was in the way she held herself, the coy ploys towards social considerations of how one should act, but not how she would act if she wasn't there for other reasons. When their eyes met, the spiritual spark of understanding passed. They both held a thing, an it within them, and a shadow dogging their steps. Slight glances and occasional catching of stares between the teenagers continued through dinner till both families sat in the family room. A large cut pine tree laden with ornaments, tinsel, and LED candles occupied the corner. The fireplace crackled from the lick of flame and the pop of bubbling amber. Outside, the snowflakes fell as softly as the street lamps' trickling lights, casting an orange, pellucid filter over every white surface. It gave an eerie beauty to the backyard, viewable from the arrangement of furniture. The evening had passed with joviality, till Hans cleared his throat, setting his tone to a more serious theme. "Despite the fact we may be distant cousins, it's obvious we are not so different. We hold much in common." Ralph's father, sensing the change in tone, mirrored the inquiry with equal seriousness. "Agreed. I'm glad you were able to visit. You're meeting with all of the Midwest Fischers, right?" Hannah held her husband's hands, supplementing his tone with maternal energies.
"As many as we can in the couple of weeks we have. We felt the need to visit you first, since we figured some family time might be positive," and her eyes flitted towards Ralph before readdressing his parents. "In all of our lives."
Ralph's mother grabbed her husband's hand in response, her defenses raised as slight as her voice.
"Well, thank you so much. We can always use more family time."
Hans, no sign of sickness, cleared his throat a second time. "Yes, well, I also wanted to ask, how have you felt being a Christian?" Ralph noticed his parents' eyebrows raise at the inquiry. His mother was the first to speak up.
"We love our church. It's been nothing but good for us and for Ralph to learn values."
It was Hannah's turn to pitch, replying with some degree of obfuscation.
Oh, that's wonderful. We couldn't imagine not having a religion that preaches positive core values.
Ralph's father nodded. We agree. So, why'd you ask? Hans jumped back in. We, too, had a love for Christ-like values. We used to visit St. Mary of the Assumption every Sunday and took part in most communal activities in its walls. Helen and Lucas were baptized by the bishop, Ralph's father, following the thread to look past the preparatory story, pushed, but not Theo. No, not after my antiquing trip to Germany. See, while perusing certain antique social circles for authentic tribal rarities, there was an older man who heard I was a fisher. From the now unclasped, cracked leather duffel bag, Hans gingerly lifted a dark leather-bound tome. Its surface, well oiled, preserved in some slick prismatic trick of light, seemed newer than the duffel bag it was pulled from. The cover held some obscure symbol at the center of encircling bone shards, held by twine. Its sight, an introduction to the room, brought an odd sour aura. Hans continued. He steered me away from the rusty swords and bog amulets to this, a holy book reserved only for those in our bloodline, a link to our tribal heritage. Outside, the once peaceful drops of snow hastened to chaotic galeful bursts of ice bits rattling the windows and pelting the sides of the home. Hannah leaned forward. It's not just an accounting of ancestry, it's how we fishers once prayed, and it describes the river god we prayed to. Ralph's father looked interested, but his mother seemed less impressed. She held up a hand, saying, We're quite all right with our church, but thank you so much for... His father interjected. They haven't asked anything yet, honey. This is a piece of Fisher history. Let's hear what they have to say. Hans nodded with an appreciative smile that, to Ralph, seemed a little too wide, but didn't seem to bother anyone else. Very true. This isn't just our family's history, this is our children's history, and by learning from it, it could prevent... Hans' head turned to Ralph. Difficulties from ever arising again in their future. Ralph's mother's voice passively aggressed. Huh, what does that mean? To the surprise of the room, Helen, the eldest child of the German Fischers, responded. It means that someone tried to do to me what happened to Ralph, also while I was walking home from school, and that person was taken to the Rhine. Her eyes never once wavered, piercing Ralph's with forceful persuasion, posturing as understanding. Helen! Hannah chided. Disregarding her mother's disapproval and the discomfort of Ralph's parents, she added, It's true. It's why we praise the Rhine, and why you could too. The gale now flurried to unrelenting strokes of white twirling past the rattling windows, masking the neighborhood's light, yet still glowing orange from the reflection of the fireplace, billowing with noticeable intensity. Frustration in his voice, Hans apologized. I'm sorry for how Helen talks. She always speaks her mind and never thinks of anyone else's feelings. Directing his words past Hans, past Hannah, past his parents, directly to Helen, who had not broken her line of sight, Ralph asked, What is the Rhine? How did it save you? Ralph's father held up his own hand, now matching the energy of his bristling wife. I'm sorry, this night was for the most part great, but we're going to have to ask you to leave. Perhaps we can meet again tomorrow for some lunch before your flight to Minnesota. Sensing her position now held sway, Ralph's mother amplified her husband's voice. Yes, this really was wonderful getting to meet you, and maybe we can speak more about the house swap tomorrow, but this conversation really is... Ralph broke from his parents' unwanted cover, continuing his own conversation. Helen, how did the Rhine help you? It was the Rhine spirit, our protector, that... Her voice was drowned out by the mixed refutations of both parents, Hans and Hannah apologizing, while Ralph's parents saying whatever they thought necessary to end the conversation. The chromatic leather was quickly stuffed back into its bag, and the German Fischers walked towards the door, both expressing their surface-level regrets and thanking the American Fischers for their hospitality. As they shook hands, Helen broke through the barrier her parents made to give Ralph a hug. He felt her left hand, stuffed something into his back pocket before she disengaged. In a tone imitating authenticity, she spoke for everyone to hear.
"I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend you, Ralph. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Fischer, for having us. I hope we can meet again tomorrow."
Ralph's mother nodded her head, finality in her tone.
"We'll see. It's been a long night. Thank you for coming over."
After several more rushed, departing cliches, the door closed to Ralph's parents, sighing, looking to each other, and then at Ralph's despondent frown.
"I'm so sorry they brought that all up, Ralph. We didn't know they'd do that." I wanted to hear what Helen had to say.
Coming to the defense of his wife, Ralph's father put an arm around her.
"Son, your mother's correct. They didn't have anything good to say, and they were trying to take advantage of what happened to preach something weird that we don't want. Maybe I want it."
With some eagerness in her voice to soothe him from his contrary posture, she said,
"No, you don't, honey. Those beliefs always come with miserable people, and they always do weird things. I'm miserable now. So what would change between me praying to Christ or some German god?"
His parents stood there, mouths opening and closing in unprepared pursuit of some theological explanation that would quickly wrap the conversation.
"Look, Ralph, on Sunday we're going to sit with Father Mulhaney, and he'll speak more about why these old things aren't real. They were lying to you, honey, and we don't like people lying, because, they were trying to sell you something." "Sell what? An answer I've been looking for? One I haven't found while praying?"
An edge in his father's voice, he said,
"Ralph, careful." "Careful about what? I want an answer." "Well, we don't have one."
External pressures fractured his mind, posing questions he wasn't taught the answers to. Answers on suffering, reasoning, the purpose of pain, the desire for strength, manifesting an amounting desire for faith, all against the impenetrable barrier erected by the generational divide of what parental wisdom asserted was an answer and what Ralph desired for an answer. It was the divide between the acceptance of life being outside your control and the desire to control one's surroundings. Ralph's heart hardened, his fists clenched, and he took another distancing step as he charged up the stairs to his room, where he slammed the door, wedging it shut with the backrest of his chair, and laid on his bed toward the wall. The hurt of uncontrolled reality weighed upon his shoulders till it manifested into stifled sobs. In the dark of his room, lit only by what ambient light passed through the snow, casting its four-paned shadow onto the ceiling, he heard his parents' muffled voices downstairs, their tones passing along the spectrum of emotion as they relayed everything they felt in the bond only they two knew. At the click of lights being cut, they ascended the stairs, again stopping briefly by his door, yet not lingering, their voices now hushed, passing down to their room at the end of the hallway. Ralph's salt-crusted eyes were about to close when their spark reappeared, at a low, lonely cry calling from the dark. The tempest's roar paved over every other sound, but not the braying or footfalls of whatever wandered the street parallel his home. Ralph wiped at his tears, then walked to his window. A diffused, darkened shadow blocked some of the street lamp's halo, radiating outward in concentric circles of soul-luring light. The shadowy block was stationary, a downward triangle of pentagrammic proportions, thin lines cracking upward on either end. Sinister shudders vibrated Ralph's vision. The seeping chill of winter's rage called upon his skin through the frosting of the window, the foggy heat of his suffering drawn through the glass into the welcoming arms of an unknown purpose. Ralph, refusing the tingling of his skin and the sweat of his neck, racked his brain for what seasonal decoration could have been placed there. Why was it so high up? What was it attached to? And how had he not noticed it before entering his home? Perhaps he didn't notice it because the street lamps were so tall. They were maybe 20 feet above him when he stood beneath their glare. The image, closer to a natural comparison of black and white static, tilted upward, blocking the entirety of the light to rend the night and its gale with an ear-peeling screech. Before it slammed back down with sledgehammer hoof falls, charging down the street, a twirling trail of meteorological phenomena following in its wake. The only image left in his focus, the reflection of his slack-jawed, open mouth, and the white of his eyes. Remembering the object Helen placed in his pocket, he dug it out. It was Helen's number scribbled on a piece of ripped napkin. His phone appeared in hand, thumbs flying across the digital keyboard of haptic vibrations to send a desperate message.
What does that god of yours look like?
The response was near immediate.
Meet me at the bridge over Knife River, and you'll find out yourself.
Ralph shook his head in disbelief, typing back.
Tonight? The weather's impossible. Nothing is impossible for the faithful. I will be there in half an hour. Don't be late.
Ralph closed his messaging app, opting to swipe through repetitive lists of games, social media, and benign tools. He wasn't searching. He was performing the 21st century equivalent of an ostrich scooping layers away for a hole to bury its head in. The magnitude of choices before him caused a spiraling sensation satiated by mindless scrolling. However, the action was not corrosive enough to purge his mental vertigo of the answers he wanted, even if they came at an unknown cost. He wanted to see God, and since Christ hadn't shown his face, what difference did it make if he looked upon another who would show itself to him? Gripped by dark energies, promising vague notions at his psyche's peripheral, Ralph pocketed his phone, now motivated to movement. He lightly unhooked his chair to quietly elope to his pile of damp clothing hung near the front door. Ralph's brain pulsed with the congestion of self-justification. So much had been taken from him. His choice to take Helen at her word would not be taken as well. His conscious actions preoccupied with destination, he reopened the Messenger app and typed,
I'll see you at the bridge, leaving now.
Passing from the stale realm of his shattered childhood, as warm as it was, through the portal of face-stinging, breath-stealing freeze, Ralph plunged into tumultuous night. Warmth was fueled by his heart beating defiantly. Motion was fueled by his yearning for an answer. Surety of step was fueled by the promise of a distant cousin, met only once, an hour earlier. So onward, Ralph trudged against the deathly blows of nature's fiendish expulsion of summer's follow. What would have been a several-minute walk waned longer. His face hardened, cracked at the turning away from the wind, then hardened again when he searched for his path. Snot froze his nostrils, so he bellowed air from his heaving chest. The cry he heard earlier whipped with the snow past his barely comprehending ears. Peering through his powder-choked lashes, he swung his head from one side to the other, searching for the multi-story figure whose presence he felt approaching. Like a cloud on the horizon, stretching its gradient overhead. It was closer now, its call lingering in the slowing wind, now stalling, as it would when reaching the eye of a storm, just as Ralph took his first steps onto the bridge. There was a single lamp, its flame magnified by the folded glass of its Fresnel lens, perched on the bridge's concrete guardrail. Helen's face, illuminated from beneath, smiled, her arms wide open.
"Cousin," she shouted, "I had no doubts you'd come. Do your parents know about this? Do yours?"
Ralph shook his head.
"Then what does any of that matter, what any of them think, when the faith of our spirits proved their caution false?"
She pulled the book from its duffel and held it over her head, its shimmer somehow brighter by a single candle than the ambiance of his family room. The symbol in the cover's center shined. The bones dripped a green fog. "Come closer, and we together shall bring the Rhine to your river." Ralph approached, the wind petering to a vague spherical breeze encompassing him, Helen, and the book. She opened its pages, searching past illustrations of bones, twigs, and corns bound in strange ways. She passed long incantations and their recipes. She passed mummified leaves and thin stretches of pale pink leather pressed into the weight of the tome. When she found the page she was looking for, a fanatical settling of satisfaction was heard in her treble. "Take off your glove and hold my hand." Ralph tugged his mitt off, then slowly, cautiously, stretched his pale fingers outward. Bead blurred perception, her hand quickly clasping his, then pulling their outstretched pulse over the frozen river. "Be strong," she cryptically warned, before producing a blade from beneath her coat. With all the skill and strength of a zealot, she ran the blade across their hands. Blood mingled and it spilled to the river below. Ralph gritted his teeth till he was finally able to retch from her relaxed grasp. "Those calls you've been hearing tonight, the figure you saw, wants to be your guardian. It wants to protect you, just as it protected me. All it requires is the sacrifice of our pain and the privacy of keeping its knowledge within our family. The greater we sacrifice, the more it's willing to help." A new sound bubbled from beneath, adding its frequency to that of the muted gale and Helen's voice. Water sprung from beneath the bridge, its miraculous conception concentrated around the splatter of blood below. Returning to the book, she read, her hands raised upwards. "The Rhine follows with floods. Its guardian protects. Where Fischer blood lays, its water will perfect." A braying cry projected down on the two young Fischers from behind. The hot stench of its breath felt on the shoulders before they turned to meet Helen's protector and Ralph's would-be god. Bleached white bone, cracked ichor antlers, and red bulbous eyes bearing horizontal horse slits. It towered above their profane sacrament. From the other side of the bridge, sinewy, root-like arms grasping the edges as though it would flip the structure into the swelling river's depths. The megalithic monstrosity howled, vibrating their vision before leaning downward to stare into the eyes of Ralph and Helen. A column parted the gale above them. The light of distant stars trickled phantasmic symbols in their twirling dances, undulating foreign magics towards them. Helen pulled the sleeves covering her arms back, revealing tattoos dancing to the same cosmic tune, some space still left for new additions. "Quick, Ralph, complete your connection to our God. Bare your arms, accept his blessing under his watchful eye." Helen's voice spoke with authoritative tendrils. dispensing of Ralph's inhibitions and opening his mind to the impossibilities of the manifestations itching ever closer toward him. Despite his initial revulsion, the malaise of his charmed mind nearly drove him to acceptance, till, through the tectonic shifting of metaphysical magic shaping reality, he heard a voice he knew all too well.
Ralph! What are you doing?
The old god, Helen, and Ralph all looked to the small figure of Alvin, standing with as much courage as he could muster, nerve-wracking tremors shaking his frame.
Ralph! Run!
Helen clicked her tongue disapprovingly, matching the old god's ground-rumbling groan.
This matter is only for our blood, Ralph. However, his arrival is fortuitous.
Ralph's hypnosis broke at the hunger in Helen's voice. What do you mean? Keep Alvin out of this.
Oh no, it's too late. He will be your first sacrifice. Remember, the level of protection it's willing to give is proportional to the level of sacrifice you're willing to make. At Alvin's death, guaranteed by his knowledge of our ways now, you will be the beachhead for the Rhine's influence over these lands. You will practice the old ways. You will be our god's American champion.
Ralph shook his head, his conflicting desires dividing his consciousness at the crucible of diverging destinies.
No!
He screamed, stepping away from the indignance of Helen and her god.
No, I will not sacrifice Alvin.
Helen pleaded, nervously shifting her eyes to the rotting husk of tribal tribulations looming behind her.
Ralph, what are you doing? Think of what happened to you. What will never happen again when you give yourself to the Rhine?
Ralph looked for a way out. Once spotting the lantern, book, and blade waiting at the edge of the bridge, he bolted at the first thought. Helen cried, launching herself towards him.
No, Ralph!
Without the need for a second thought, he kicked her square in the stomach, whipping her head back from the impetus of her kinetic pendulum to the logical, bloody amplitude of her cracked head against the roadside. The old god roared, eyes radiating waves of wrath, bathing the bridge in scarlet light. Its arms raised above it, fists knotted to thorny cudgels, ready to deliver fitful form-obliterating impacts. Ralph took the blade and plunged its tempered tip into the pages, tearing through its pressed contents, slicing upward to split the symbol and its bones. An impulsive decision, made by the estimation of his gut, sheared a green fissure through the air. The red eyes flashed upward, shining its essence towards the stars. High-pitched sizzles escaped micro-fissures appearing across its skull. The beast's head, burgeoning outward, exploded in a splintering detonation of shrapneling bone pieces the size of branches. The snowstorm's wailing was amplified momentarily by its shockwave, launching the floating symbols outward in fiery, air-singeing salvos across the vicinity. Its color faded. The boom echoed to oblivion, and night quieted. The snowstorm's clouds retreated to reveal the full majesty of North American astronomy and its only moon of earthly consequence, bearing a thankful magnification of every joyful feeling known to man. This feeling projected downward into Ralph, resonating resplendence across his body. The snow shined about them with a pure silver sheen, as though the land were freed of its own heavy burden. Ralph knocked the book, the lantern, and the blade into the river, their contents swept away in the final draining of its once demon-bound swells. It didn't just feel good. He felt free to shed himself of a past life in the light of a grateful universe. Alvin still stood at the edge of the bridge, calling to Ralph in a tentative voice.
was that?
Ralph turned and walked toward his friend.
I'll tell you on the way home. How did you know I was here?
Alvin held his phone up.
You texted me asking to meet at the bridge.
Ralph paused, then pulled out his own phone. In his dire state, he must have unknowingly sent the text to him instead of Helen. His eyes grew at the thought.
Helen,
he muttered, looking back at where she should have laid, her body vacant of its crash site.
Did you see where she went?
Alvin followed his eyes and scratched his head.
No, I was watching you the whole time. What do you think happened to that girl?
Ralph noticed the god remnants had also disappeared.
Whatever happened, I don't think we're going to see her again.
Alvin popped his collar.
I hope not. And the big monster?
Ralph completed his walk back to his friend's side, put an arm around his shoulder, and echoed.
I hope not. Also, why did you come? It was a blizzard outside. No one in their right mind would be out in it.
Alvin sheepishly grinned, cocking his head to one side.
I'll always look for you. We might not be related, but you're my brother. I'm just glad I found you this time.
Ralph's eyes reddened with thankful tears till he could no longer resist embracing his brother tightly. Merciful moments passed till Ralph broke the hold and walked with Alvin back to their street in the crystal clear purity of a calm December night. Since then, the people in Ralph's orbit noticed a considerable improvement in his mood, and a confidence of character bloomed from the previously lifeless soil of his psyche. It was something he had days to reflect upon until he sought out the priest of his local chapel that Sunday. Sitting in front of the spiritual healer's desk, he recounted his experiences, exchanging some details with a tale he thought more believable. The old god became a vengeful spirit, his cousin was now a school friend, and the tools of summoning morphed to a Ouija board. After telling his altered tale, Ralph asked the interested, stone-faced guardian of faith,
now that I know that there are spirits beyond, now that I know that there are evil things that I can call upon for results to my problems, but they cost me the relationships of my friends, how can I depend on good things to save me when they didn't in the past?
The father leaned back in his chair, brow furrowed in thought-intensive gravity. After some time, he pulled his chair forward and said in a soft voice,
It's difficult for adults to counsel children on such matters. Yes, you're now a teenager, but to us and certainly your parents, they'll always see you as their child. They want to be your protectors, and sometimes parents think their role is to hide you from the knowledge of evil. Unfortunately, parents commit a grave disservice by not exposing their children to the horrors of the world in a safe setting, through a knowledgeable lens, and being there to provide answers for how to deal with such evil. Usually, it's an uncomfortable subject they've mentally distanced themselves from. They try living a happy life, so they think happy thoughts. That comfort provides a superficial barrier until the evils of the world inevitably tear through it.
Ralph looked downward, picking at the wrinkles in his palm.
Ralph, you have amassed far more wisdom than any boy your age should know. The brutality of a stolen youth has caused many a soul to seek comfort in the side of rebellion, in the side of satanic rebellion. Now, while I don't think you're telling the full story, I sense you're genuine, and your question is genuine. The only answer I have is that our existence is a series of choices we make while we experience the good and evil of choices made by us and others. Like Job under strain, we too must resist and seek the higher path possible from acceptance of our suffering. We must keep our hearts open, our charity pouring, and once the hateful essence of fallen existence retreats from the action of defiant good in the face of ancient evils, we will find ourselves in the company of saints who did the same before us. Ralph, We do good regardless of evil perpetrated upon us. And when we wonder, why me? God doesn't blame us for wondering this. He only wishes we shed the emotional symptoms of our earthly existence and carry his torch as an example for how life should be lived, inspiring others to do the same.
Ralph nodded his head and looked up to stare out the office window, absorbing the frank knowledge his priest passed on to him. After several minutes of shared silence, Ralph stood, thanked the priest for his time, then walked out onto the shoveled path, choked with exuberant applications of salt. He looked to the crisp blue sky, felt the warmth of the sun on his skin, and uttered a silent prayer he attached to the trauma of his past. He released it, the weight lifting from his shoulders, and the potentiality of a new life, unburdened by the uncontrollable, unfolded before him. My dear Croatoan Radio listeners, whether child or adult, evil comes for us, and when the layers of implied retribution fail to deter, as the forces of good, regardless of religion, often teach, our only option is to shed ourselves of emotional burden and push forward with a purity of charitable purpose, authentically elevating the spirit of our circles, promoting positive supernatural energies in a universe of disparate intentions, seeking to use you and your family for its own nefarious ends. So please, as you listen this night, follow Ralph's example, reflect on the good you can do this blessed month, and shed yourself of any chains binding your psyche. After all, the alternatives of old gods required the shedding of blood.